Motor imitation is the ability to watch what someone else does and perform the same movements. It's one of the most important skills that we can learn. It allows us to learn new skills quickly without specific teaching. We use imitation to problem solve when we are in new or unique situations. How do you know what to do or where to go when you walk into a new store or business? If you're unsure how the business works, you're likely to look at the people around you for some guidance. You watch what they're doing and then you imitate them. While most children develop this naturally, many children with autism require specific teaching to pay attention to those around them. Teaching your child to imitate others allows him to become more independent. He learns to look for cues around him without waiting for someone to tell him what to do. As with teaching other skills, make this fun for your child. Be silly and provide lots of reinforcement. Mona is worried about her son Emmett. Emmett has been receiving ABA services since receiving his autism diagnosis at the age of 2, but he seems to be making limited progress. His teacher is frustrated because Emmett doesn't follow what the other kids are doing, and he needs to prompt Emmett constantly to keep him on track. Although Emmett has an IEP and there's an aide in the classroom, Mr. Parker says Emmett should be following the other kids in the class more. Mr. Parker said that he spoke to the BCBA at the school, who suggested focusing on teaching Emmett motor imitation skills. She said if Emmett learns to pay attention to what the people around him are doing and then do what they're doing, he will be more likely to follow the other kids in his class and become more independent. Mr. Parker said they would be working on this a little at a time. Mona spends a few minutes several times a day practicing simple motor imitation skills with Emmett. They have a busy family life, so it's hard for her to remember some days, but she builds the practice into some of their routines. While Emmett takes a bath each night, they practice a few skills. She started with movements he seems to enjoy, including clapping, waving, and pushing a boat. At first, he needed a lot of help, but gradually he began to respond more independently. Over time, Mona introduced skills that were a little more complex, including 2- and 3-step imitation such as clap and jump. She has noticed Emmett is starting to spontaneously imitate some of the things she does. This has made it easier to teach him to do other things, such as putting his plate in the sink after he eats. When Mona meets with Mr. Parker again, he reports that Emmett has become much more independent in class. When the other kids do things like line up or go to circle, Emmett will usually follow them. Mr. Parker is confident that Emmett will continue to learn the classroom routines much more quickly now. Imagine you boarded a plane to a country across the planet from where you live. You have traveled for endless hours without stopping, and they didn't provide food on the flight. You're hungrier than you've ever felt. As you step off the plane and into the airport, you see people milling about, many of them eating. You want to ask them where and how they got the food, but you don't speak the language. What do you do? How do you find the food? How do you learn how to get the food? You would probably look at the people around you until you saw someone getting food. You would follow that person and do what she does. You might try to say the things she says or make the gestures she makes. In short, you would imitate her actions. Imitation allows you to learn new skills without specific teaching. This is why it's so important for your child to learn to imitate others if he doesn't already do so. Many children with autism need specific teaching to learn to do this. Think about times when your child should naturally imitate others. When his brother waves hello to him, does he wave back? Does he participate in games like Follow the Leader and Simon Says? If your answer is no, then it's time to start teaching. As with other skills, you first must choose targets. Once you know what targets you want to teach, perform the target action. Prompt your child to perform the action if he needs the prompt. Then provide reinforcement. You will start teaching small, simple motor imitation tasks and build gradually. What is simple for one child is a bit trickier for another, so think about those movements that your child does every day. Are there some that he's more likely to do on his own? For some children, imitation with objects, such as banging a drum, is easier than imitation of other movements. Gross motor movements are usually easier than fine motor movements, so plan to introduce those first. There's no right order, just what works for your child. As with other skills, you're going to start by playing with your child. Remember to make it fun for him. Perform the target action and say, "Do this," or "Try this one," or "Copy me." Do not say the word for the action, just perform the action yourself. Then, if your child needs help, go ahead and prompt him to perform the action. As soon as your child performs the action correctly, even if you helped him, give him a reinforcer. You will need to fade your prompts so he doesn't rely on them, but at the beginning, go ahead and give him a reinforcer even if you used a prompt. Plan to teach him 2 to 3 different targets at a time so he doesn't anticipate what you're going to ask him to do when you say, "Do this." Mixing up the targets ensures he's paying attention to your actions. Eventually, we want him to imitate your movements without you telling him, "Copy me." As he begins to imitate some of your actions on his own, introduce new targets. Gradually increase the difficulty of what you ask him to do. Once he has learned to imitate basic movements, begin to teach him 2- and 3-step imitation by combining some of the movements he already imitates. Anytime he spontaneously imitates you, provide praise and reinforcement. You don't need to set aside a lot of time for teaching these skills. Steady practice and lots of reinforcement during your normal routines will help your child develop independence.